Welcome back to our Life Group Bible study on the book of Matthew. Tonight we're going to be in chapter 23, so go ahead and turn there now. If you've read ahead already, you know that this is a chapter that's just basically a verbal attack on the Pharisees. And I know we've talked about it a lot before, how Jesus bashes the Pharisees or really catches them with their questions and gives them a hard time. But nothing like in this chapter. This chapter, sole focus is to rip the Pharisees, their attitude, their actions. And if Jesus felt the need to spend this much time focusing on the damage that the Pharisees were doing with their attitudes and their actions, then I think we need to take this message to heart. And I don't think it was just a message intended for the Pharisees living at the time of Jesus. I think it's in the Gospel of Matthew because he knew that for every generation that came after him, there would be believers and there'd be religious people who would take on the actions and the attitudes of the Pharisees and commit these very same sins. And so because this is a concern of Jesus and something he feels passionate about, we need to recognize that passion and make sure we stay away from these ideas, these mentalities, these attitudes, and don't be like a Pharisee. If I were the title of this message, it would be, Don't Be a Pharisee. So let's see what Jesus has to say, starting with verse 1. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The teachers of religious law and the Pharisees are the official interpreters of the law of Moses. So practice and obey whatever they tell you, but don't follow their example, for they don't practice what they teach. They crush people with unbearable religious demands and never lift a finger to ease the burden." All right, so I'm just going to go bam, bam, bam with a lot of points today about what not to do. And the first one is this: don't be a hypocrite. Don't be a hypocrite. Practice what you preach. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because I think this is the one that sticks out the most when you think about Pharisees. Unfortunately, this is one that sticks out the most with Christians in general for a lot of people. And I think this is the number one reason why people have a hard time coming to a belief in God. It's because they know so many people that call themselves Christians. And because they know these people and their overall attitude is not one of love and grace and mercy and helpfulness and kind-heartedness, they have no desire to investigate and look into the gospel message. And so we cannot reach people if we're going to be hypocrites. We can't focus on other people's sin and bash them and be hypercritical and post things all over Facebook and Twitter that are really negative and condescending and expect people to want to hear the message about Jesus Christ. It just can't happen. Jesus' teaching is all about serving people and loving people. And when we aren't serving and loving people, we can't reach people because we are being hypocrites. And so Jesus is saying, don't do it. All right, let's keep reading though. Verse 5. Everything they do is for show. On their arms they wear extra wide prayer boxes with scripture verses inside. And they wear robes with extra long tassels. And they love to sit at the head table at banquets and the seats of honor in the synagogues. They love to receive respectful greetings as they walk in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi. Don't let anyone call you rabbi, for you have only one teacher, and all of you are equal as brothers and sisters. And don't address anyone here on earth as father, for only God in heaven is your spiritual father. And don't let anyone call you teacher, for they have only one teacher, the Messiah. The greatest among you must be a servant, but those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And here's the second point. Don't seek praise. Don't seek praise. And let's face it, this is a very hard point to take to heart because all of us on some level seek praise in our lives. We want that validation that what we're doing is good, that we are valued by people, and that we are doing the right thing. And so hearing praise just feels so good. The problem is when you seek it, you are setting yourself up for failure, though. No one knows this better than I do because I do have a problem with seeking praise. I want to have that attention. And a lot of times I just for fun, I talk trash and give people a hard time, that kind of stuff. But when you do that, you definitely draw attention to yourselves. And when you are known for drawing attention to yourself and seeking people's praise or talking, exalting yourself, whenever that happens, you are putting a huge bullseye on your back. You're setting yourself up for failure. It's so funny to me. My own family, the people that are closest to me, and I'm very close with my family, my own family loves to see me lose. It's just a fact. No matter what game we're playing, it could be a board game, it could be some kind of athletic competition. They love to see me lose. And whenever it happens, just the look of glee that's on their face it's kind of funny. Because I talk junk and because I am always winning, it seems like, when I don't, they revel in it. And so one thing that happens is when you seek praise and draw attention to yourself, people will want to see you fail. And when you do fail, they'll revel in it. And so that's one of the reasons why God tells us not to exalt ourselves. Let him exalt us. When we humble ourselves, he will exalt us. And others will exalt us too, and give us that praise that we might desire when our focus is actually humility. But there's another reason why it's very dangerous to seek praise, and that's because you set up a false foundation. When your motivation is external rewards and that you are seeking things from other people and seeking external rewards and praise, and that is the motivation of why you do stuff, that will inevitably lead to failure. If you raise your children in a way that you guide their behavior based on bribes and external rewards, eventually that is going to cause problems for your child, because eventually that temptation is going to outweigh, that peer pressure, that temptation will outweigh your external rewards, and they will give into that temptation. Your foundation has to be on Jesus, and has to be on what is right and what is wrong, and on character and integrity. If they aren't doing the right thing because it is the right thing and because they're trying to serve God, inevitably there will come a time where temptation will outweigh whatever external reward you have to offer. And I really truly believe this is the reason why even a lot of Christians become lazy and slack at their job. I believe this is a reason why a lot of marriages fail. And this is why a lot of people turn away from God. It's because they're not getting what they think they deserve. Their foundation is based on external rewards. And as long as they're getting their perks from the job and they're getting paid what they think they deserve to get paid, and no one else is getting paid more than they think their coworker deserves, and as long as these marriages are built on getting what you need in this area and feeling loved and feeling valued, then you'll continue in that marriage. And as long as God is rewarding you and things aren't going poorly in your life and you think everything is going well, then you continue to serve. But marriages fall apart, performance falls apart at work, and the relationship with God falls apart when the foundation is external rewards and not on what is right and what is wrong and what is all about integrity. And so be careful about this. Our foundation has to be on Christ. It has to be on the truth of the Bible and the truths that we find in there and the right way to live. And if it's not, we're setting ourselves up for failure. All right, but let's keep reading. I'm on verse 13 now. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You won't go in yourselves, and you don't let others enter either. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cross land and sea to make one convert, and then you turn that person into twice the child of hell you yourselves are. And here's the third point I want to share with you. Don't make it difficult for people to connect with God. Don't make it difficult for people to connect with God. And this is why at Renovation Church, membership is not a really big deal at our church. We do have something called the Renovators class, and we encourage everyone to take it, all adults, teenagers to take this, because it's going to explain what we believe as a church and what we value and just how we should be living our lives, and then what we have to offer at Renovation Church. But we don't make a huge push with it. We certainly don't say you're not invited to our church, to attend our church, if you're not going to be a part of that. We also don't make you jump through a bunch of hoops to become a renovator, because we want people to feel welcome. We want them to know that everyone comes to this church with baggage. Everyone comes with sin problems. We all sin. We all fall short of the glory of God. And so we don't want to make people feel excluded. We want all people to feel welcome. It's the reason why we cater to all different styles of music. It's why we kind of have a dress code. There's nothing wrong with dressing in a really nice suit, but there's also nothing wrong with someone that is not church, doesn't have a background of church culture, who comes in with a t-shirt and raggy jeans, and that's just maybe the best that they have. we want them to feel comfortable. So we kind of hit the middle of the road with the way we dress because we want all people to feel comfortable. We don't want to turn anyone away. We want all people to be welcome and hear the gospel message. And so, and that's we believe that's close to the heart of God, and I think this passage reveals that too. He hated how the Pharisees made people jump through hoops to come to connect with God. All these different rules that people had to have this burden on them just to be able to come and worship God. And God says that is evil. Don't do that. All right, now verse 16. Blind guides, what sorrow awaits you? For you say that it means nothing to swear by God's temple, but that it is binding to swear by the gold in the temple? Blind fools, which is more important, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? And you say that to swear by the altar is not binding, but to swear by the gifts on the altar is binding? How blind! For which is more important, the gifts on the altar or the altar that makes the gift sacred? When you swear by the altar, you are swearing by it and everything on it. And when you swear by the temple, you are swearing by it and by God who lives in it. When you swear by heaven, you are swearing by the throne of God and by God who sits on the throne. And here Jesus is pointing out just how awful their mentality is when it comes to possessions and money. For them, it was more sacred and more powerful to swear by money and the sacrifices and the gifts than it was by the actual house of God, the temple, and by God himself. They didn't want to do, they basically held possessions as more valuable than the church and people. And so this is the next point, point number 4. Don't value possessions over people. Don't value possessions over people. Now, I don't think any of us would say that we value possessions over people. Now, we don't want to believe that. We don't want to think that way. And certainly, if there was a burning building and we were racing inside to help, I don't think any of us would grab the TV as opposed to the child that was sitting in the room. I truly believe that none of you would do that. But at the same time, we all know people. We all know people in our lives that would just be overwhelmed with joy and peace and thankfulness if they were blessed with a $500 gift. We know people that are hurting that could use money in such a way and that would be blown away by that. And yet, I don't know how many times that we have given really generous, audacious gifts like that to people in need. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of us who would go and put down $500 for a monthly car payment that we can't afford. That's a regular thing that might happen. Is $300, $400, $500 on a car payment that we absolutely can't afford. We're committing to that month after month. And so my challenge to you would be to think about ways that you can actually cut and save money to give it away. Maybe you can cut out dinners out for a month and take that money and give it to someone. Maybe cutting out alcohol for you for a month and it can save up some money. Maybe you can just do a little bit extra work and just be doing those extra jobs just to take that money to give away. There are lots of different ways to trim the fat and to save up money with a little bit of sacrifice that you could take a lump sum and bless someone tremendously. And I am convinced that if all of us be willing to do this on a semi-regular basis, two things would happen. One, our heart would dramatically change for people. When we see the joy that they get out of receiving that gift, when we see the difference that we're making, giving to people has just a way of changing our heart and making us more likely to give more. We would have a different heart for people. I also think that in giving in that capacity, I think God would dramatically bless us through that. I think we'll see financial blessing if we're willing to do that, because in doing that, we are proving to God that we are good stewards of our money. That if he was to give us more, then he could trust us to use that money for the benefit of his kingdom, for the benefit of others, to show love. And so if we show God that we are that kind of giver, we can be trusted with money, he's going to bless us with more. And so I want to challenge you. What can you do to radically save money to give it away? What can you do? And if you'll do that, I bet you'll see a dramatic difference in your life afterwards. All right, but let me keep reading. Let's Don't value possessions over people. But let's keep reading where it says on verse 25. Oh, sorry, verse 23. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens, but you ignore the more important aspects of the law: justice, mercy, and faith. You should tithe, yes, but do not neglect the more important things. Blind guides, you strain your water so you won't accidentally swallow a gnat, but you swallow a camel. And this is one of the two times that Jesus very clearly supports and says that it validates the aspect of tithing. Because yet his focus is not tithing, but he says, yes, you should tithe. And so clear scripture from the New Testament in both Matthew and Luke that says, yes, we should tithe. But that's not the point he's trying to make here. He's pointing out that the Pharisees do tithe. All right, they tithe and they also do other things for the law. They do it well. But then they overlook the more important things, because rest assured that loving people and showing mercy to people and justice to people is way more important than tithing. It just is. Tithing is very important, but much more so, love is the number one thing that God wants us to do. God wants us to love God with all our heart, soul, and mind, and he wants us to love other people as much as ourselves. And so that is the first two and most important commandments in the Bible. That's what he cares about more than these other little things. But the Pharisees are focused on other little things: hand washing and giving, even of the tiniest part of their herb garden, and all these different little things and rituals that they go through. And God doesn't care about half this stuff nearly as much as the things that they're neglecting by turning people away from God and by criticizing people and being harsh and judgmental and unloving. And so here's my fifth point. Don't stress over minor details while ignoring the big picture. Don't stress over minor details while ignoring the big picture. And I really think this is why we have so many denominations in America. I mean, we have so many denominations because we are worrying about little petty details and beliefs that are not essential to the gospel, and we are squabbling and arguing over those, and we're having church splits and denominational splits. That is so far from the heart of God. And our church can even be guilty of this. I mean, I think we're much better than a lot of churches out there about this, but there's little details we could get hung up on and how worship is done and how the music is and how the kids area is and what people are being taught. I mean, I've heard people get in long arguments over Halloween and Santa Claus, and then, other religious topics like eschatology, like end time stuff, which no one knows for sure exactly how end time prophecies will be fulfilled, but yet we still argue about them, and, predestination. We hold on these ideas, again, that are not essential to sharing the gospel, and we split apart. When God makes it very clear he wants us unified. So let's not be like Pharisees in that area either. All right, now verse 25. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you are filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first wash the inside of the cup and the dish, and then the outside will become clean too. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but filled on the inside with dead people's bones and all sorts of impurity. Outwardly, you look like righteous people, but inwardly, your hearts are filled with hypocrisy and lawlessness. Many years ago, I was cleaning out the trunk of my car, and this was maybe a biannual event. It didn't happen very often. My car was known for being pretty messy, and the trunk I almost never mess with, but it was getting out of control. And so I popped that trunk and was ready to clean it out. I'd already cleaned out the rest of my car. It was looking good. I was excited about it. I'd already washed the outside, so I was vacuuming the inside and cleaning up everything. But I got to the trunk, and I opened it up, and there was just this horrible, rank smell. It was awful, and I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't see immediately what was going on because I had so much crap back there. But I kind of pulled something to the side, picked up a shirt, got rid of a chair that was on top, and then I see this swarming maggots, just crawling all over the place. And it almost made me gag. It was just so disgusting. But apparently, the last time I had gotten groceries, I had a package of meat had fallen out of the grocery bag and was sitting there and just infested by these maggots. As soon as I opened the trunk, the smell just spread. I mean, I had to sanitize that area so much. It took a lot of Lysol. It took a lot of cleaning, and it really the smell and the kind of went to the whole car. It did not matter how well I cleaned the outside of that car. It didn't matter how much I vacuumed the front seats. There was something rotting inside, and so no one wanted to be in that car with that rotting meat. No one wanted to have anything to do with that car. And we are the same way. We can wash the outside as much as we want. We can dress up and play the role. We can carry our Bibles. We can attend church every week. We can say the right things on Facebook. But if we have a sin problem, if we have something that is rotting inside of our hearts, eventually it's going to come out. It can't be held there together. It can't be hidden forever. Eventually it will come out. And Jesus is saying, you Pharisees, you are so worried about your outside appearance, but your heart has turned evil. It has turned black. You don't care for people. Your hearts are hard against me. You're not receiving the truth of what I have to say. You need to take care of your insides. You need to take care of your heart. And that is the case for us too. Don't let seeds of bitterness build up inside your heart. Make sure you are regularly doing a heart check, making sure that you are lined up with Scripture, making sure that you are free of sin, that you know is sin, and make sure that the inside's taken care of, and don't worry so much about the outside. God's not worried about the outside. He's worried about our hearts. All right, let me finish this chapter up. Long section with verse 29 through 39, and we'll deal with our last point. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build tombs for the prophets your ancestors killed, and you decorate the monuments of the godly people your ancestors destroyed. Then you say, if we had lived in the days of our ancestors, we would never have joined them in killing the prophets. But in saying that, you testify against yourselves that you are indeed the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Go ahead and finish what your ancestors started. Snakes, sons of vipers, how will you escape the judgment of hell? Therefore, I am sending you prophets and wise men and teachers of religious law. But you will kill some by crucifixion, and you will flog others with whips in your synagogues, chasing them from the city to city. As a result, you will be held responsible for the murder of all godly people of all time. From the murder of righteous Abel to the murder of Zechariah, son of Barakah, whom you killed in the temple between the sanctuary and the altar. I tell you the truth, this judgment will fall on this very generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones God's messengers. How often have I wanted to gather your children together as a hen protects her chicks beneath her wings? But you wouldn't let me. And now look, your house is abandoned and desolate. For I tell you this, you will never see me again until you say, blessings on the one who comes in the name of the Lord. I think the end of this chapter really gives us an insight of why Jesus is so passionate here and so passionately attacking the Pharisees. It's because he knows what they're about to do. He knows what they're about to do to his people, to his disciples. He knows that they are about to kill him and murder him, crucify him on a cross, and then afterwards, their same hardness of heart will lead to them persecuting other believers, and they will flog them, and they will stone them, and they will crucify them, and it happens. It happens just as he prophesied it would happen. And so his heart is breaking. It's breaking for the Jewish people. And he's breaking that the Pharisees are leading the Jewish people away from the truth of the gospel, and he is angry and he is hurt by all of this. And I think the major sin problem they have here is that they think that they are righteous, but are so far from righteousness. And this is the final point I want to leave you with. Don't assume you are more righteous than others. Don't assume you are more righteous than others. Here the Pharisees felt like they were the most righteous people in the land. They had their act together. So much so that they talked about how evil people were in the history books that they would read, in their law books that they would read. And they would see how prophet after prophet was killed and beaten and tortured. And they're like, we would never do anything like that. And because that is their heart attitude, that they are holier than thou, they are more righteous than people, and that they would never commit those sins, they commit the most awful sin of murdering the Messiah. They kill the Messiah, and they kill some of the most righteous and holy prophets and evangelists that God ever sent to earth. It is that heart attitude that leads to that. And I think we can also fall to this heart attitude of feeling that we are more righteous than others and that we would never commit such and such sin. Anytime you think in your mind and in your heart and you see someone screwing up majorly, drug addiction, some kind of sexual sin, being terrible with finances, and you look at that person and your heart attitude is not mercy and empathy and wanting to help, but it's, man, I would never do anything that stupid. I would never do anything that evil. You are setting yourself up for failure because that is the wrong attitude. Because our mindset should be, thank God that he gives us the Holy Spirit and that God works through us so that we aren't committing those sins. But for the sake of God, we would be that person. We would be committing those sins. It is God's mercy and grace that put us in a position where we are successful and succeeding and being free from sin. And as soon as we start thinking it is our own merit and our own abilities that we would never do that because we are better than that, then God's presence and protection leaves us. All right, because we're starting to make ourselves our God, that we're independent and don't need God, and that is the way to set yourself up for failure. And again, if you humble yourself, God will exalt you. But if you exalt yourself, God will leave you, and you will be abandoned to your own consequences. And I'm not saying that he will leave you and never take care of you. I mean, if you are a follower of Christ, the Holy Spirit's inside you, and he's going to look out for you. But he will allow you to fall if you choose to exalt yourself. And I know that I've experienced this in many different ways, but just maybe the most obvious and tangible way is I never thought I would get divorced. Didn't think it was a possibility. Did things the right way with my first marriage. Everyone looked at our marriage as being so healthy and happy, and I knew that I was living for God. I was treating my wife the right way. Marriage was easy. I didn't even understand why people were having so many problems with their marriage. Marriage was easy until it wasn't. Until my wife fell to temptation and started committing adultery, and then completely changed her personality and who she was, and suddenly I'm divorced. And I thought there's no way I could ever be like that. And when I looked at people who were divorced, I just assumed they have a sin problem or they don't know how to do marriage, but I know how to do marriage. If you think that you can't fall to a sin, I'm telling you, you are setting yourself up for that sin. Be humble. Realize that any sin that you are free of, it is but by the grace of God, and that you need to latch on to God and that his help through you and give him all the glory and all the credit. And when that happens, then God really can do great things through you. You can accomplish so much when you are allowing God to work through you rather than thinking it's all about you. All right, well, that wraps up Don't Be a Pharisee chapter. Next chapter is chapter 24, and it's fascinating because we're going to talk about some end times theology because Jesus actually presents a prophecy of the end times in chapter 24. So read ahead, kind of know what we're talking about, and we'll see you next week.